This is Optimal Relationships Daily, episode 283. One Thing Real Love Never Does to You, Part 1, by Marc Chernoff of markandangel.com. And I'm Joss Marie. Hey, and welcome to the show where I try and bring you some of the best relationship content out there every Monday through Friday. And I actually narrate it to you just like an audiobook, so you can press play or pause whenever and wherever you'd like. And today, I've actually got part 1 of a 2-part mini-series by Marc Chernoff. But first, I'd just like to say thanks to Canidae for sponsoring today's episode. Canidae is an independent and family-owned pet food company who uses the same care and the same quality ingredients they want for their own pets when making their pet foods. If you'd like to try Canidae for free, you can request a free sample right at canidae.com/podcast. That's CANIDAE.com/podcast. And I'm pretty curious to hear what this one thing is that true love never does. So let's get right into Marc's post and start optimizing your life. One Thing Real Love Never Does to You, Part 1, by Marc Chernoff of markandangel.com. A couple weeks ago, an attendee at our annual Think Better, Live Better conference asked me an interesting question. What's something real love never does to you? And just now, I received almost the exact same question in an email from a reader. So, this seems to be a topic worth discussing. Over the past decade, Angel and I have coached hundreds of incredible students who are struggling to find real love in their relationships. And we've also spoken to hundreds of happy couples that were willing to share their real love stories with us. All of this has given us keen insight into the beliefs and behaviors that both help and hurt people's relationships. So today, I want to publicly reply to both our conference attendee and reader, with their permission of course, and take a close look at one key thing real love absolutely never does to you. But before we get to that one thing, let me tell you a quick story about a happy couple that's still together and deeply in love nearly 20 years later. The girl in the mirror. She looks at herself in the full-length mirror that hangs from her bedroom wall, completely naked and exposed, yet confident. She's older than she was 5 years ago, but feels much younger. And she thinks momentarily about the different men who held her in front of this mirror. They thought they possessed her. They thought she was theirs, because she was in their arms, so delicate and sweet. But really, she possessed them, because she possesses the space in front of the mirror, and the moments that occur there too. She gazes down at the man lying naked in her bed. But he's not just another man. For the first time in years, this one sleeps differently. With a subtle smile, a dash of poise, and a history free of envy. And she smiles and giggles to herself. Just then, he stirs, slowly lifts his head, squints his eyes, and looks at her standing across the room, naked in front of the mirror. His movement startles her and she jumps. Not because he sees her naked, but because she isn't ready for him to be awake. Not yet. This is her time, the early morning, when the world is quiet and she can hear the sound of her breathing. It's a sacred time when answers and insights aren't as hard to come by. A time when her mind is at peace and her heart beats slower. And it begins beating slower again, because he closes his eyes and falls back asleep. She slips on her robe, tiptoes into the kitchen, pours coffee grounds and water into the coffee maker, places 2 slices of bread in the toaster, and opens the window curtains. The warm, early morning sun floods into her home. A few minutes later, the toaster pops. She spreads strawberry jam on the toast, pours a cup of coffee, opens the front door, and sits down on the doorstep. And she thinks about how happy she is. Happy to simply be, to be free, to not be tied down by another person or have another person tied down by her. She stares up at the morning sky for a prolonged moment and smiles. "I'm in love," she says aloud. The guy in the bed. He hasn't fallen back asleep. When he lifts his head, squints his eyes, and sees her standing naked in front of the mirror, he senses that she isn't yet ready for him to join her. So, he closes his eyes and pretends to sleep. He listens as she giggles, slips on her robe, tiptoes into the kitchen, and rattles the toaster, the coffee maker, and the curtains. He loves these little noises he calls music. Like the music of last night, when they talked and laughed for hours over a bottle of wine. Until unexpectedly she kissed him, and then he kissed her back because of her philosophy and her beauty. She took off his shirt, he took off hers, and it went on like that for what seemed like hours until they were together in bed naked. He thought he could love her. He wondered if he did love her already, and he wondered if she felt the same way. When the kitchen noises stop, he gets up, slips on his boxers, and tiptoes into the living room where he sees her sitting peacefully on the doorstep. She's completely bathed in the sun's light. As she eats toast and drinks coffee, she seems to be laughing, a sweet, silent laughter. He wants to bother her, to tell her that he's hungry too, and that he wouldn't mind sharing a slice of her toast. But he doesn't, because she seems so happy and free, the way it should be. So instead, he stands in the doorway and admires her from a distance. And he thinks about the fact that she isn't his, that she will never be his, and that it's okay, because she just said, "I'm in love." To be continued. You just listened to part 1 of the post titled, "One Thing Real Love Never Does to You" by Marc Chernoff of and&nbsp. Okay, not fair. This totally leaves me wanting more. And speaking of more, our pooch Billy can't get enough of his Canidae food these days. Canidae has been making great foods for their pets and yours since 1996. And they remain an independently owned brand that pet lovers can trust to provide innovative and authentic foods for the beloved dogs and cats that enrich our lives in so many ways. And even more, they're taking the first steps at Canidae Farms toward getting involved in the growing of some of the ingredients they actually use. As soon as Billy hears me filling his bowl in the morning, he runs right up to his gate and waits eagerly for me to let him in. And I couldn't be happier to see him eating food that comes from a company that prides itself on the quality of their ingredients. Go to Canidae.com/podcast to try Canidae for free by requesting a free sample, and you can get other special offers too. That's Canidae.com/podcast. Again, that's Canidae.com/podcast to try Canidae for free. Thanks again to Canidae for sponsoring today's episode, but that's a wrap. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to sharing part 2 of Marc's post with you tomorrow, where your optimal life awaits.